With a range of global and local competing factors, Team SA has to ensure that its message is focused and successful in procuring investments and unlocking extended funding from the World Bank. This as the World Economic Forum kicks off in Davos, Switzerland. What is South Africa's inventory list, and what are the factors that affect how we define success at the conclusion of those talks? SABC News economics editor Tshepo Mongoai joins us. Good evening to you and welcome. There's a lot on the table. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has to tell South Africa's best stories in Davos. The trouble is that you have this WEF global risk report that has flagged the issue of energy and the collapse of our infrastructure as being risks to our economy. How do we convincingly tell the world it's going to end and that we have a solid, measurable plan in the face of open-ended stage 6, even though Eskom's now announced the return to stage 4?
Well, you'll recall, Iman, that a couple of years ago, policy certainty was the message that we're taking out to investors in Davos. We showed that we will stick to the policies that we're currently on, and the fact that even though there were going to be any changes, the policy would not change. And I've seen recently among several surveys, political risk has moved slightly below, but the issue of energy has actually become more of a concern that most investors are actually asking about. Of course, there's no way that the engagement will not touch on the ANC economic policy, some of the proposals that were made there, because investors would want assurance in terms of which one are you going to adopt, and which one you're going to run with, and which one are you going to consider, or others that perhaps will never even see the light of the day. There are some of the proposals that obviously make, triggers fears in the hearts of investors when they hear about them. And definitely the Team South Africa must be able to tell a story that they are in control. The fiscal path that they have adopted in the medium-term budget policy statement, as well as in the budget, is continuing, and they are consolidating. The debt ceiling remains a key role that they're going to stick to. They are determined to reduce debt, and the medium-term expenditure framework will remain a guiding principle going forward. It's not going to be easy, of course, of risks. I mean, we know that the issue of a public sector wage, it's still a main issue that perhaps could change the outlook going forward. What is it that government plans to do? Are they going to be firm enough and stick to those guidelines, or are they going to be shaken and move away from it? If they do, what is likely to happen?
I mean, there are also things like, the ANC's policy resolution around broadening the mandate of the central bank. Some would say, well, many economies shouldn't have much of a problem with that because that is the direction that, that the world is going in a sense, but also the integrity of their investments here and whether they would be able to be powered by actual electricity. But I want to talk about the grey listing. This is something, Tshepo, that we talk a lot about. We've now signed off on 2 key pieces of legislation aimed at tightening our grip on corruption and on things like money laundering. That meeting with the Financial Action Task Force to keep us off the list is going to be key. How are our prospects looking in the face of this decision, which is coming shortly?
In fact, it reminds me, I mean, as journalists, we gate stop people as they come in and they go out. And Team South Africa actually went to Morocco to doorstop the Financial Action Task Force team that is there on a field visit to look at Morocco, because they are grey listed and they are working very hard to get out of that grey listing. So South Africa, upon hearing this, they went to Morocco on Friday, and I'm not sure if they managed to meet the team to convince them ahead of their decision later next month that they are working hard in terms of those 2 pieces of legislation, because what they're concerned about is not necessarily the policy, but how various facets of law enforcement and the private sector are going to be working together in dealing with the issue of financing of terrorism, illicit financial flows, and so forth. So there has to be a demonstration that our bodies that are tasked with this responsibility in South Africa can be able to identify and be able to act, and those paths and decisions must be able to be seamless without major challenges. And that's going to be a major challenge to convince the Financial Action Task Force that we actually know exactly what we are doing, and we are getting somewhere in raising those concerns.
These are also fascinating because we have to have our eye on so many different aspects of the economy, both internally. We have to look at our frameworks of accountability, the strength of our pieces of legislation. We have to think about the reputation of the country, so many different things. But the one thing, amongst others, that we can't escape from is our inflation regime. And I want to just talk about it very quickly. We are in trouble by most accounts when it comes to that. Our inflation expectations are set to rise. And it's fueling the thinking that actually the central bank is going to be very aggressive in its rate hikes over the next couple of months. What is the outlook from where you stand? And again, those rate hikes come in a context of belt tightening for South Africans. The average basket of food is going up. We have, the issues around the electricity hikes and the proposed increases that Eskom has managed to secure, which is no doubt going to have an impact.
No, absolutely. The question, not just in South Africa, is whether have we reached the peak of the inflation, as we've seen in the last few months. In South Africa, in July, we touched 7.8%. And there were others who would say perhaps we can even get to 8%. But what we have seen recently is as a gradual reversal. Of course, it's been very, very slow, very slow coming down. And there are still a whole lot of risks that could suddenly push up inflation. But thanks to the international oil price, we've seen some slowdown there. Food prices also, not just domestically, but internationally, we've seen some slow down there. We've seen, the war in Ukraine pushed up the cooking oil and other commodities. And as a result, South Africa, as we always say, it's a very small open economy.
Yeah.
And we rely on lots of inputs in our economy, a lot of imports, especially food commodities. So that is a major concern. But good news is that the projections of the Reserve Bank is that we could be back to the midpoint of that 3 to 6% by the second quarter. So we're likely to come down. Yes, next and this week we expect Statistics South Africa to release the December consumer price inflation. Trends elsewhere, we've seen that inflation, it is coming down, and we expect that South Africa will follow that. And perhaps we could see inflation moving from 7.4% print that we've seen last year in November to around 7% in December of last year as we close the year.
It's going to be very interesting to watch, and it'll be lovely to watch it through your eyes. Tshepo, thank you very much for talking to us. I didn't think that we'd have to question, having some fried fish and some fried chips and maybe some fried samosas, but the cost of oil is astronomical, over the 100 Rand mark, I think, for about a 1.5 litres, and 6-pack of milk touching on 100 Rand. Outrageous. We're going to have to start doing without and forced into slimming down, not by choice, but by circumstance. Tshepo Mongoai is our economics editor here at the SABC.